So why don't we do a story about the stock options, because no one's really figured it out. So I decided to put one of our top investigative reporters on the story, Peter Elkind.
Steve Jobs had a very talented group of key lieutenants around him, and he wanted to give his people stock option grants that were so big that they wouldn't even think about going somewhere else because the upside was so enormous.
The key thing is, if the stock goes up, which we always hope it does, then the golden handcuffs are dramatically increased, which is what I was hoping would happen.
To make those option deals even sweeter, companies would allow executives to buy stock on dates in the past when the price was low, so executives could make millions in the blink of an eye. This was called backdating, and it seemed like the perfect solution, except for one thing. If not properly reported, backdating is illegal.
200 U.S. public companies are under investigation over charges of backdated stock options for their senior executives.
Backdating was a dicey game, and it landed several executives in jail for fraud. But it became a frequent practice at Apple under Jobs.
Apple eventually conducted an internal investigation and found thousands of cases where stock options had been handled inappropriately. None of that had taken place according to the company's own report before Steve Jobs had returned there.
A key advisor on many of the troubled backdating schemes was a powerful Silicon Valley attorney, Larry Sonsini.
Larry Sonsini had kind of spread this dark art in the world of Silicon Valley. He's a guy who whispered to the CEOs of all the top tech companies, here's how you can do this. He was certainly very close to Steve Jobs.
Sonsini had known Jobs since Apple went public in 1980 and had been a board member at Pixar when it created a vast program of brazenly backdated options for top executives. Yet despite Jobs' long history with backdating, Apple's own investigation, led by Al Gore, absolved Jobs of any wrongdoing.
Their conclusion was that Steve Jobs didn't appreciate the accounting implications of the issue.
I know you're not an accountant, but do you have an understanding as to what generally accepted accounting principles are?
Not really.
Jobs' accounting naivete would be challenged by his own CFO, Fred Anderson. A hero during Apple's comeback, Anderson was one exec who took the fall for backdating.
As Apple's chief financial officer, Mr. Anderson, you had overall responsibility to ensure that the company complied with all financial reporting requirements, true?
On advice of counsel, I declined to answer based on my Fifth Amendment rights.
When the SEC investigated, Apple effectively threw Anderson under the bus. He was forced to resign from Apple's board and to pay $3.6 million in penalties. But in a very unusual statement, Anderson's lawyer made it clear that Fred had relied on statements by Jobs that turned out to be false, and that Anderson had explained the dangers of backdating to Jobs.
Now, this contradicted exactly what Jobs and the company had maintained, which was that Steve Jobs didn't appreciate why this was a problem. I think the notion that Steve Jobs knew nothing and Fred Anderson and Nancy Hynan were entirely responsible is ridiculous.
The company has confirmed that Jobs himself was awarded backdated options that carried a false date in October 2001. According to Apple's own report to the SEC, the award was improperly recorded as occurring at a special board meeting when, in fact, such a board meeting did not occur.
A fictitious board meeting that awarded Jobs 7.5 million options. Just what was going on? At first, all fingers pointed to another member of the Apple comeback team, General Counsel Nancy Hynan, who had certified the minutes of the phony board meeting. Like Anderson, Hynan would settle with the SEC without admitting or denying guilt. But her silence raised questions. Would she have just decided on her own to fake a board meeting in order to enrich Steve Jobs? Who wanted this done?
As